We get started. My name is John McHugh, and I'm going to, my presentation is scratch building through plate girder bridge. I have this on a PDF, this PowerPoint on a PDF file. So if anybody wants a copy of it, just send me an email. My email's there, and I'll send you a PDF file if you're interested.
Focus the camera on.
I gave this presentation at the convention last year in Connecticut, and Glenn happened to see it, and he grabbed me, tackled me on the way out, and said, "Hey, we need this for the division." I said, "Absolutely." So just to piggyback what was mentioned earlier, if you haven't been to a convention, it's a great time to see some great presentations, visit some great layouts. If you're interested in operations, you certainly can do that also. But you talk railroad all weekend. It's a fun time, and hopefully we'll get our act together out there, help us out, and we get going in a couple of years. All right, so what I hope to do today is I want to illustrate and explain how I scratch built a through plate girder bridge and did well enough to earn a merit award. Okay, how many in here have earned a merit award? I know we got a couple ringers in here. I just want to let the rest of you know, listen, I am not an expert modeler. I'm an average modeler. I have no extra skills. I'm not a structural engineer, okay? Just an average guy. And if I can do this, you certainly can do this. I understand people don't want to undertake the AP program because it's a lot of work, and I understand that. But for me, I like the challenge. I like learning new skills. I like doing the research. I become a much better modeler, but most importantly, it gets me psyched about the hobby. Building this bridge took me about 60 plus hours. I couldn't wait to get downstairs to work on this. And I had many years of my layout where I did nothing. And since I've started the AP process, that I've really engaged. So if you're sitting around saying, I don't know, I'm kind of bored with this, something you want to think about. Okay, so this bridge goes under master builder structures. I understand most of you know this. I just want to go over this quickly. You have to build 12 structures, 6 different types. One must be a bridge. So I get that out of the way quick. Okay. 6 structures have to be scratch built. And they explain scratch builds, 90% have to be scratch built parts. And the remaining 6 must be super detailed. And the NMRA website tells you what super detailed means. So, you have to really basically kit bash and do more to meet that requirement. 6 must earn merit awards and do the SOQ, statement of qualification. This is the most involved because you have to have documentation for each of the 12 structures. So it's pretty, it's a lot of work. But, you definitely get good results, hopefully. So if you're thinking about, well, anyways, it's a sheet from the NMRA page, but basically there's the AP judging guidelines. It's very important, and it's a 10-page document, and this is what the judges actually use when they judge your model, and it explains the process. But each of the 5 categories, it explains what stuff about the category. It also explains to the judges what to look for, and if you're looking for this, it's very easy to find. But I didn't know it existed. And so I said, wow, this is great. And so you really need that. They need to really put this up front someplace so people know to look for this. Well, this is the matrix. Damn. This is the matrix. And what I had up here, if you read the sheet, there are things called points to ponder. And this tells the judge, look for these things. Okay, so if you're building that model, you better have those things. Or if you don't have those things, explain in your write-up why you don't have those things. Okay, and so they have points to ponder. They have construction, and if you looked at this, the construction it says make sure you have it's square, level, plumb. Make sure you have no gaps. Make sure there's no fuzz if you have wood. They tell you exactly what to look for. And I think most people understand construction quality. If you have gaps, if you have glue lines, you can see that. The other part over here, which I would have, is thing called complexity. And this is where people either don't know about this or don't understand it. I've been involved in judging for, a few years now. I've had a handful of things judged. I volunteered the last two conventions as a judge, okay? So I have a little understanding. I'm not really great, but I have a little understanding. And I've met people who submitted models to the contest room and didn't get merit, and they were devastated, totally devastated. And talking to them, I learned that what they didn't understand was complexity. One guy had 4 models. They were really nice, but they're from kits, and all the parts are made. So the complexity was very low. Okay. And he just didn't understand this complexity thing. And honestly, I didn't understand it until I looked at the sheet. So anyways, assume there's a chart here, a matrix here, and this is the line, and anything down here is merit awards. So again, you have to be down. So the way it works is that complexity goes this way. Construction goes this way, quality and complexity goes this way. You have to have the two. So you could have a model. I could get a Walters kit and do a great job. Construction is good, but it's going to be on this side of the complexity because it's not complex. If I take a model like a kit bash, that's going to move the complexity a little bit more. If I take a craftsman kit, it's a complex craftsman kit, that's going to move it even more. If I scratch build, that's going to move the complexity way over. Now, this bridge is a relatively easy bridge. It's not a cantilevered bridge, etc., or a wooden bridge. So I need to do everything I could. My decisions were based on how can I move that complexity over as much as possible. And when I go through the process here, I hope they show. That's what I was looking for. Okay, this is better. So now that I have an understanding of the complexity issue, I want to start the process. One of my advice, and this is what Tom just mentioned too, great segue, develop a recording system. So when I start the process, I write down every single step I do, okay? Makes the write-up much easier. If you can see, I also put in how many parts I use for that particular step so that I can keep tabs of my parts. I have a separate sheet of all the parts that I use in the process. And most importantly, especially with the phone, folks, I take a picture every step. Click, 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 click. So it helps for documentation and remembering what I did. Also, you can do wonderful presentations like this in the future. Okay, so that's the added bonus. Okay, so what type of bridge to build? So as I mentioned, I have this in my layout. I had this corner piece here for years and years. I had a little Luan bridge there, and I decided, okay, I'll start with that one. A through plate girder bridge would go wonderful in that spot. And before I started, though, I needed to have abutments because this bridge is on a slight curve. Again, that will add the complexity a little bit. Also, one side is skewed. That's going to add to the complexity a little bit of the bridge. So before I get proper measurements, I needed to put the abutments in. So I had to create the scene. And so I just filled in the riverbed there, had the abutments, and I used a foam board to get the correct measurements here. And I put the track on because I wanted to make sure that on a curve, you want to make sure that the engine or future engine, my engines tend to be short, but just in case, I want to make sure nothing hits those Ds that support the girder, okay? So now I have my dimensions, okay? So I need to find a bridge. One of the things for conformity, to maximize your points of conformity, it's best if you can get an actual prototype to copy. Okay, so without looking for a bridge. And I went online. I lived in southern New Hampshire. I went, a lot of the bridges, the old bridges on the rail trail, I could use those, but this is a very short bridge. I wanted something, first of all, open deck, it's over water. I wanted something with the guardrails relatively short because there's a curve. I wanted something built around the turn of the 20th century. My railroad set in 1960. I definitely wanted something where the knees that come down from the girders are very short. I didn't want them sticking out in case. I don't want anything to hit it. So I'm looking for that bridge. And I was just looking and Oh, before I start that, I know nothing about bridges. Nothing. So first of all, the data sheets that they have some great information out there. This has actually skewed how to build a skewed end here. But the best information I got was from the Comeback Bridges and Trestles. This was the first edition. I have a newer edition out. The first 4 chapters goes over exactly basic bridge construction. And they have great charts because the bridge construction, any engineers in here? Okay, here we go. It's built based on weight and et cetera, and how far the panels are, the length, all that stuff. But they have great charts to determine the length of the beams, et cetera, and in this case, the girders. So, all right. So, how to find a bridge? I lucked out. I was in North Central Connecticut driving around in November. I had to go to Stafford Springs, and right before Stafford Springs, Connecticut, I'm looking down at the rail line. I think it's a New England Central now. And I look down, I see a bridge. Go around, went down. I said, this is great. Next week, I came down with my camera, my tape measure, and my notes. And I photographed everything, brought the dog with me. I photographed everything. Look at the guardrails here, very short out. It was great, okay? And went underneath, I took tons of photographs. So I went home. And again, first thing I always do is make a scale drawing of the bridge. You need this for the conformity anyways to maximize your points. So I built I planned it out based upon the prototype. All right, and I just have point things out to you. The beams on the bridge, they support the main support. They connect the girders, and then the stringers, which go horizontally in this particular drawing, that's where the rails, the ties sit on, and they're going to connect. So obviously you have to. It's very difficult to have 100% copy of these prototype. So I altered things.
Something for your real estate.
Exactly.
And you don't have to.
It has to be 100%.
You're on railroad freelance.
Yeah.
So you don't have to follow any prototype.
No.
But you're saying this for the AP, it would have to be representative of a prototype and be.
No.
So when you're writing it, you're putting as much documentation of what you're modeling in there, and you're documenting variations,
Right.
and you're just talking about that in your writing, but you're trying to maximize your points.
Oh, so the more prototype, I'll say exact. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, there's always a
But
cheat
you can
phrase.
still get this is where I'm confused. Can you get an AP or
Merit.
I don't understand the difference between. How do you say there's two different things?
Okay. Yeah. So I'm working on the structure, and I mentioned the first slide. I'm working on the structures certificate. You have to build 12 models. 6 of those have to be good enough to earn merit. So I'm talking about how to earn merit for the 6th. Okay, the other 6 do not have to earn merit.
It's the same thing. You're documenting. You're documenting excellent modeling skills by following photographs and pictures and duplicating exactly.
But it's the quality of
The quality.
John just said at the beginning was if you're going for a merit certificate, you want to improve your complexity and you want to document this stuff. So it's more likely to reach the 87.5 points. There's a section called conformity. In that conformity, you can show prototype drawings of it, and you write the phrase that this is done in the style of this particular.
If I had that form that showed, it would make sense. It didn't show, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was just getting.
Let's say he's talking about construction now, but he's going to go into conformity. We're talking a little bit. We're going to go into detail.
Yeah, I want to cover those.
Gather more points.
I got it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, anyways, for conformity, you need to have a drawing. This also helps with the construction. Okay. So then you have a list of parts. that you have to have this for the when you fill out the form anyway. So you have my list of parts there. So, well, normally I have a nice divide up. Anyways, so now we're going to actually build the bridge. So I start with the floor. First of all, it's nice to have some tools. Yeah, I have many of the tools in the MicroMark catalog I've had over the years. Some were great, some are horrible, but anyways, I see a lot of heads going like this. There we go. This is a very handy tool. Anybody own this? Oh, it's great for yeah, she cut. So it's really nice. It's a MicroMark, just a chopper. So I start off by, I have 20,000 styrene, and I cut them into strips. Now this is for my bridge. Again, the width and the span and the weight category, they vary. The charts will give you that in the book. So I cut them at 30 inches by 19 and a half feet because that was the length of my beam. I had to have it wider. Most bridges are like 15 feet, but I made mine 19 and a half because of the slight curve. Okay. I had to explain that to the judges. So I've used the prototype. Now, a prototype on this particular bridge, it had a sheet metal and it had angle irons. That's how it was built. So at the bottom, I added angle irons. I had 60 thousandths angle irons, and I had to cut a notch because there's going to be a stiffener coming down from the girder that's going to hook on here. I'll show that in a minute. Okay. And again, things have to be square and they have to be level. So I made sure that when I put these together, I made sure that these are square. I use Tamiya extra thin glue. Some people use MEK. You can use all kinds of things. The advantage with this, if I use like Testor's type glue, I want to get glue lines. This stuff, you place it together and it wicks right in. Okay. And you don't get glue lines. Sometimes you squish it too much, it melts it, it comes out, you can scrape that off. But this type of glue is definitely what I would recommend where it wicks in versus where you glue it on. So on the beams here, I had to put a filler in here, which is support. Each side has a filler. And at this point, I decided I was going to put rivets on to decals. I could buy like Central Valley. I could get Central Valley. They have sheets of pre-riveted stuff. I could use that. But again, this adds to my complexity, okay, by putting the rivets on. And so I put the rivets on both sides. Then the stringers, on this particular bridge, the stringers are just I-beams. Okay, so again, I showed the judges that it's I-beam. I didn't do it to save time. This is what I had. So I cut I-beams, again, the 1/4-inch I-beams on this particular bridge, 15 and a half feet long. And then I had to cut 60 angles right here. That's how the I-beams are going to attach to the beams. All right, assembling the floor, jigs. Judges love jigs. Okay, and also for jigs, I can't eyeball this. I need to have things uniform. This floor, folks, has to be flat and level and square. If this is off, the bridge isn't going to work. Okay, so it's very important. So I made a jig, and I have, again, this is a MicroMark little glue jig, which is very handy. And I put my jig in, you see the arrow pointing in, and I made sure the stringers were equidistant and everything was flat and square. Okay, and I put it together, and I made sure this is all square, and I put weight on it. I let it sit there for a couple of days and cure and get rock hard because I don't want this to skew it all. And then underneath the beams, I added 60 thousandths, again, an angle right here for support underneath the beams. The girders, again, since this is a skewed bridge, the girders are going to be, one's going to be longer than the other. I cut them to the length 20,000 styrene. This particular bridge for the width and the weight classification was 8 feet wide, and I mark all my lines. Now, this particular bridge, between beam to beam is called a panel, and this one was 16 feet in this particular bridge. So that's 2 5-foot panels in the middle is a 1 6-foot panel, and it was off. So I need to tell the judges that it's not all equidistant, that this bridge had some difference to it. Okay. And then so at the top of the beams, I had to cut 80 thousandths angle at the top and bottom, both sides. Okay. And then in this particular bridge had fillers in here, 20 thousandths by 60 fillers. And then the angles are going to go over the filler. One of the things I didn't notice until later on is that when I had my lines, it depends where the filler is in relation to the line. Now, I read an article recently. It's very true. You fall in love with your model. And when you fall in love with something, you ignore the blemishes, right? And I noticed this way in. I said, oh, they're off. And so I was able, one of the pluses with the use of Tamiya paint, glue, that I was able to use a knife and just scrape it off and change that. But just pay attention to that. So the rivets, I was doing fine. I was clipping along at a good speed, and then I hit the rivets. Now, again, I could have used Central Valley type products, but again, this adds to complexity. So I use micro scale rivets, and which comes in 2 big sheets. They give you lots of, you see up here, they give you lots of rivets.
Is that Michael Moore?
Was it Micromark? Yeah, Micromark rather. Micromark rivets. I'd use Archer if I was going to build a motive power. I think the better. But for this, I'm using, because if one little sheet of Archer, I can get 2 big sheets of this.
Sure went out of business.
Of course they did. Everything I like goes out of business. So, you cut them in strips, and with this brand rivet, it's you have to leave them in, soak them a lot longer. There's a learning curve to use these. But anyways, this took a while, as you can see, because it's top and bottom, both sides I had to do. So I get all the rivets. And the other advice here is always use a sharp blade when you're cutting styrene, when you're cutting decals. I had a package of 100 blades, and I go through them, quite frequently. You can tell when it's not working. Don't try to rip it. Just get another blade.
So you put the rivet decals on after that girder was assembled?
Yes, the girder's assembled, and then I put the decals on right now. Yep. Because once the bridge is built, it'd be impossible to do. So that's what you have to think about. How you
I was wondering if you put them on like the angle iron piece before you moved it in.
Well, no, because I could access this. If I couldn't access this, I might have to do that.
Those?
Yes. Yeah, that little bump. Yeah. And so now I'm going to attach the floor to the girders. I had to cut little gussets, and again, use the prototype. They're about 1 inch wide, so 10 thousandths by 88 and 36 feet long. I cut the angles here, and you can see I glued them to the bottom of the floor, and this is going to attach to the angle and the wall of the girder, okay? And I want to make sure, one of the things I have to do, again, this floor sits up from the bottom of the girder, so I had to make sure it was shimmed properly to get, because this angle right here has to be 90 degrees, okay? And you notice my Fast Trax jigs make great weights. I don't know if anybody else uses them for weights. They make great weights. Adding the knee braces, one of the things that attracted me to this particular bridge, the knee braces they're only a foot out, but they're long, so they're 6 feet by 12 inches. So I had to cut them down, angle those properly. Now, on the bridge, they're probably about 3/4 inch thickness, okay, which would be about 10 thousandths. But I'm going to use this bridge, so that would work. So I thought, well, maybe I should go to 40 thousandths. And I put 40 thousandths on, and I played with it. I said, I don't like this. So I went to 60 thousandths, and not prototypical. But I explained to the judges, I knew that, I know that, but this is why I went to 60 thousandths, okay? Because I need the support, because it's going to be a bridge that I'm going to use, okay? So I glued the knees to the end, and I had to put there's angles here, and the smallest angle you can get is 3/64 angle, which is fine, except 3/64 angles is so small and it's pretty thin. How they deal with the strength is they kind of fill in with concave into that point there, and so underneath, well, you see in a minute, it doesn't matter, but up here you're going to see when I did the feet, I decided not to do that because it's pretty obvious up close that it's not really great. So anyways, I added the angles, and you notice how these go all the way down. This angle goes all the way down to the bottom. That's why I cut out the angle in the beam at the beginning here. The bridge shoes. Now these bridge shoes I think are kind of unique. It's part of the structure here. It's no rollers. They just have plates underneath. So this took again, this is great for scratch building because the number of parts for each shoe went up considerably. So I had to put a piece at the bottom, 40 thousandths, 27 by 30 here, and then I'm going to add pieces on to make it flat. And then on the other side, I have a gusset right here, and then I have to have a filler. Okay, and you notice how I doubled this up. I'm just copying this. Is what I'm doing. And notice how these are angles right here. And I felt that using the 3/64th angle with the concave, it just didn't look right. So you'll see how I changed that. So the shoe braces now, this side on the exterior it has 3, and the inside it has 2. So I did that, and then I added angles, and what I use is a 10 by 40 thousandths. I just kind of glued them together, and I'm going to have to put rivets on each of these spots. Okay, complex, yes, moves it up. Okay. Top and bottom cover plates. Again, this is 10 by 188 thousandths. One goes all the way across, and then the next one's 12 inches from the end, and then 5 feet from just 12 feet from the end, and 5 feet from the end. Again, that length determines the bridge. There's a formula to use, but I just copied the prototype here.
So when you were on site, you took a lot of measurements.
Oh yes, everything. See, this is probably my 4th model. The first time you do this, you don't take enough measurements. And the second time, you still don't take enough measurements. So by this time, I didn't want to make another trip down to Connecticut. So I took everything, lots of pictures, lots of measurements,
Was this an active railroad?
Yeah. Well, it's active, but it's lightly used.
So you didn't get caught?
No, I think it's the central New England.
So you didn't get caught?
No, I didn't get caught. There were no signs, I mean, the rails, you could tell it was used, but very infrequently. Shh. All right. Yeah. So the bottom, I have the lateral bracing here, and this is the 3/64th coming across. This is pretty easy. Notice I notched out the middle because they're going to cross here, and then they have a plate, 10 by 40 thousandths, 12 feet long, that kind of supports the top. And you see this going across here. Now, again, on this particular bridge, there's no top lateral bracing. A lot of bridges do have that. This one did not. So the remaining, I put the rivets on. I did not put the rivets underneath. If I felt that if I felt I needed to up the complexity a little bit more, I could have done that. It can't be seen, so I didn't do it. But the top and the sides and the interior, that was a lot of work unto itself. So I put all the rivets on, and then I sprayed it. Sometimes I put a primer on, but I wanted the rivets to show, so I didn't do that. I just sprayed it, and then weathered it. I used a light wash of white to kind of tone it down some, and then a light wash of earth to kind of tone it down some. And then I'm a big fan of pan pastels weathering because it gives it that gritty look, that feel, and rusty feel to it. Now, this bridge, the bridge today was pretty rusty, but this is set in 1960, so I figured it's not going to be as rusty, so I didn't weather it as much as the prototype. But again, I let the judges know that. Okay, that's the key. Deck assembly. So you think the bridge is done. Now, I could have used a Central Valley or micro scale bridge. I could have used that, right? But again, I needed to up the complexity. Okay, so I chopped the wood. I have 8x8 strip wood. I cut it to length. I spray painted it brown. Then I weathered it with a gray weather and then an earth weather. And once dry, I lightly sanded it to get those in. And the ties I could have bought. I have ties. I could have used them, commercial ties. You need to up the complexity. Now, I used a jig for everything in this bridge except this. I couldn't use the chopper because it's too thin and too narrow, and it didn't work. So I should have made a jig because I tried to hand eyeball it here, and I found that it's not 90 degrees, and they weren't uniform. And once I put them on, I had to kind of do some trimming. So that's the thing I would do differently next time. But I kind of spray painted that rusty color. It was a brown wash before I put them on here. And then to put the ties on, I may have a jig here to make sure they're uniform. And I use Pilo Bond to connect which is a contact cement, to connect the wood to the styrene. And I use 40,000 spaces here. Okay. You keep them there. The pile bond works great with wood and styrene, by the way. And so that was done. Cool. Now comes the moment, the suspense moment. Because if this track is not going to work, the whole thing is, all my work is to not. So I made very careful. So again, I have I use a flex track here, took out most of the ties. I have my jig in here. I put it in, measured it. This is where I penciled in where I wanted it to go. And then I took my ties and I put my ties, I glued my ties with yellow glue on this to the wood, yellow glue, and I scraped off where the rail's going to go. And I used pile bond on the ties I'm going to connect the rail here. In pile bond, I've had, love-hate relationships. Sometimes it works real well. Even I can shake it. I can do everything. Sometimes it didn't work. So it worked on some of them. Most of them, I had to kind of go back and put some in with a little tiny piece of wire. So how I did this is I used wax paper. So pile bond is contact. So you do it, put it on the rail, you put it on the ties. And I used wax paper, and I had a couple pieces of wax paper. So I have my jigs here to keep it aligned. So I just kind of put it on. I'd slide it back to one section, press it down, slide it back to the next section. Because with the wax paper, you can look underneath and slide it down. And once it's down, then I let it sit for a couple of days with weight on it. Okay. Now, when I thought about this, I thought, well, maybe I should spike it, but it'd be difficult to spike on the plastic, number one. I tried even the micro engineering spikes, which are small. They look too large. So I decided to do, I took very carefully, took a 000 brush, and I put a dab of paint on each tie here, making sure every couple of times I have to wipe it off. It looks pretty realistic looking down on it. Okay. And that's how I simulated the spikes. Again, complexity and detail. Okay. This bridge does not have the typical guard timbers, and again, you need to let the judges know this. This has they have strip metals. I have 20,000 by 40,000 styrene, and this is where I use the castings. I use commercial castings for this, that bolt castings. I tried to scratch build them. It didn't look well. Scratch build is good, but it has to be quality. If it's not quality, it's not worth using. And I couldn't get them to look anywhere as nice as this. So I put those on there. On this particular bridge, every fourth tie is connected to the stringer, and it's a rod that comes down, and there's a bolt on top, and the bottom is a plate that comes underneath. It's like a vise, and it kind of clamps. So it's not doesn't go drilled into the I-beam. It kind of goes beside the I-beam. It's clamped in. So I didn't do underneath. I didn't put that underneath. Again, if I felt maybe I need to up the complexity, I would have modeled that, but I didn't do that. And then the guardrails, code 70 guardrails, again, lighter weight than the code 83. I painted them, I shaped them, painted them brown, and bent them. And I also painted the spikes for those.
How many total washers?
For each one, how many ties I had, there's two pair. There's a pair of them, top and bottom. So a lot because of.
100.
Close, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
And how many did you lose?
Oh, I'll tell you something. Because I had to, I cut off the thread and put them on with CA and I'd have a little tweeze and thing and
They're still there.
oh, they're all over the place. They're all over the place.
Worse than have a carpenter's workshop.
Oh, I have my basement. I just have concrete painted gray, and I lose parts, and there's nothing there. I clean it. There's nothing there, and I look at a flash. I don't know where they go. I have no idea where they go. They just disappear. All right, so the bridge is ready for judging. Now, judging, you can have things judged two ways. The most common way is to bring it to a convention and enter it into the contest. And a contest, the judge, you have 5 teams of judges, and each team, a team consists of 2 to 4 people, usually. It has to be at least 2. And a team will be control of one category. So you have a team for construction, you have a team for detail, etc. And they will go through every single model in that room. And if I'm on a construction group, I will do just construction for all those models. So that means when I read your paperwork, I don't read everything. I just read construction. So you should have construction, make it plain, and have photos. Now, think about this. If there's 30, 40, 50 models in that room, if I spend 5 minutes on a model, that's 12 models an hour. That's looking at 3 to 4, sometimes 5 hours there. Judges do not have a lot of time to spend on your model. So that's why the paperwork is so important. Make sure it's legible, typed. Preferably, it should be, the contest form gives you these little spaces, and you can use that, but to maximize your points, you should see attached, and it should be attached. Pictures. The key is to explain it, make it brief. They don't have a lot of time. That's why some of the pictures I have are so good. Pictures, arrows. They can scan it. Because if you spend all this time doing board by board construction in a floor, and they don't know about it, you're losing those points. You have to tell them, okay? So that's one way to do it. And in the back of the form, they'll have commendations and recommendations. Okay. The other way, which I recommend that you do, especially when you're starting out, is have the judges come to your home. That's called an evaluation. And until recently, I didn't know this, but you're encouraged to stay there. And it's a great learning experience because you see them going through. They can ask you questions. You can ask them questions. They'll say, hey, this is good. There's a little gap here. See this? Oh, I didn't see that. Okay. And how did you build this? How did you build the feet for this particular bridge? Okay, and it's a great experience, and so I recommend that. Call up Tom. You can have it at your house or at a mutual place, like at the end of a division meeting. We could have that also. Okay, so and the write-up is a separate category they should do, but write-up is very important. Okay, to maximize your points. And listen. I'm an average modeler. I did this, took the step. You certainly can do this. Like I said, I know many people, some people aren't interested in AP, but I've talked to a few of you in this room, and I know you're interested. You got to take the step. And like anything else, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with first step. Okay? So I hope this encourage one of you, 2 of you in the near future to do this. Any questions at all?
I think a great presentation and example of how to increase the complexity aspect to gather more points.
That's the key. That's what people don't understand. And again, in contests, people just do not understand the complexity. They have great models that they've kit bashed and added detail to, but I wish I had the chart. It's low on the complexity scale.
The thing you mentioned about the drawing, one of the things I see often is people they have something completely missing in their write-up and they don't have any prototype information. At that point, it's very hard to get points because it actually says if you don't have that, the most you can get is 10.
Yeah, I was on complexity last year and somebody didn't fill out the form, had no paperwork. So for complexity, for conformity, you start at 10. So you go down, you get like 5. So again, anyways, that's another topic. Okay, great. Any other questions? Super.